Welcome, fellow horror hounds, and welcome to the latest episode of Talk and Stalk, your unholy home for horror. I'm your host, as always, Barry, and as you can see, I've got a very special guest with me today, the host of Wolfmans Got Nards. I'm joined today by fellow podcaster, Barry.
How you doing, guys? Nice to be here, and nice to speak to another Barry.
I was starting to think we were an extinct species. As I just said to you just before we started, in almost 39 years of being on this planet, you are only the third ever Barry that I've actually met.
We are.
Yeah, we're kind of like a dying breed almost, but you can't go wrong with a Barry, can you? Always,
no, definitely not.
Always trust and believe in a Barry.
I don't think you get any Barrys under 30 either. We're all 30 and over now.
That's it. I mean, I don't know how I got my name. I think I come out the womb with a Zimmer frame or something. I don't know. Same. But it's great to have you here anyway. And obviously, we've been talking about this for a little while now. And obviously, you've been doing YouTube a lot longer than me. How long have you been doing it for now, roughly?
Well, I started the channel 10 years ago this October, but I didn't really get into it until 2017, I believe. Okay. So about 4 years I was taking it seriously, but the last 6 before that was just having it, and that was it.
Yeah.
So about 4 years, really.
You've certainly got a lot of great content on there anyway. I've been a subscriber for a little while now, and I love the name as well. Wolfman's Got Nards. You got to love the Monster Squad.
Definitely.
But yeah, so today's topic of discussion, we're going to be talking about the best and worst horror movie remakes. Now, I think the word remake in itself is probably a swear word to some people. I don't know about you, Barry. I'm not completely and utterly against remakes completely. But at the end of the day, I realise that 95% of them are completely and utterly unnecessary. But we're certainly living in that age now where it's kind of remake after remake, isn't it?
Well, I'm okay with remakes, and I've always been okay with remakes. I don't believe that when you do a remake, whether it's good or bad, I don't believe that it ruins the original, like a lot of people say. It can't ruin the original. All it can do is give it free advertisement and say that, oh, there is an original to this, let's check it out. So I believe that if a remake's bad, it still gives you advertisement, because I've seen a lot of remakes that come out that people don't know about the original, or the original doesn't get a Blu-ray release. Yeah. And then all of a sudden when the remake comes out, the original gets a Blu-ray release or a 4K. So to me, it helps. Whether the remake's bad or not, it helps the original. So I don't believe that it's bad for the originals. I think I don't mind remakes. Whether they're bad or not, I'll give them a watch. If I like it, great. If I don't like it, then they tried.
Yeah. At the end of the day, just because of a remake, nobody forces you to watch it. Nobody's forcing you to watch it. And if you don't like the remake, that's fair enough. You can just hang on to the original. The original doesn't cease to exist just because a remake is out. But obviously, we've seen a lot of remakes. Some good. I think there are good remakes out there. We're going to be talking about some of them. And there are some completely and utterly atrocious ones as well. I mean, a lot of the time, I feel like it is kind of making money off an already existing title. But yeah, we're going to talk about some of these. So I think how we're going to do this is we'll both talk about a good remake, and then we'll go over to a bad remake, a film that we deem to be pretty bad or whatever.
Yeah.
One remake that I want to talk about, I'm going to try and do it in some kind of ascending order of quality as well. Right, the ones at the end are going to be like what I consider to be like the best, the better ones. So one remake that I do think is good, I'll admit, I'm not a big fan of the 1980 original. I don't mind it. And that is 2012's Maniac.
All right. Okay.
Starring, of course, Elijah Wood, somebody that seems to have defied the aging process. I actually think this is a good remake. I think it's pretty disturbing. I like the fact that the film very much puts you in the killer's shoes in this movie. I think it was kind of an inspired choice to do it from a completely POV approach. As I said, I'm not really a big fan of Maniac. I don't mind it. It's got some top-notch gore effects, courtesy of Tom Savini. Obviously, it was heavily reviled upon release, very misogynistic in that. But I think Maniac, not quite a good remake. Kind of a loose remake, if you will. It's not kind of a copy and paste job. But what's your kind of thoughts on that film?
Well, the thing is, I've never saw the original or the remake
Oh, okay.
of
That's
either.
fair enough. Okay.
I do have both of them as well, but I've just never got around to watching them. I did hear good things though about the remake, and I don't know if it's, again, this is maybe similar to a lot of remakes that even though it might not be a great movie to some people, it could be the fact that it's because it's an updated, different version of an original is interesting, and obviously getting the right cast is key. And I think that Elijah Wood is very underrated when it comes to the horror genre, because he does quite a few horror movies, and he dips his toe in all different subgenres of horror. And he never really gets the recognition that he does. And I did hear, and I'm sure you can confirm this, that Elijah Wood is great in Maniac. So I can't comment on it, but it's one that I will check out because I've heard nothing but good things about it.
Yeah, because
not heard a bad review yet.
He played a serial killer as well in Sin City in 2005 as well. So he's played a serial killer twice. And you're right, he is a guy that he's all over the board, you know, independent films and big films. And I think he's a great actor. But yeah, so what's a remake then for you then? What's a remake that you like?
Let's look at the list, because I've got a whole big list. I'm not going to go through it worst to best or best to worst in the best category, because some of them I feel, some depending on how I feel, one might be better than the other. But I'll start with, and you might have this, I'll start with one of the obvious ones, Dawn of the Dead from 2004. Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah, that's on my list.
Yeah, so I mean, one of the best horror movies for me for years was George A. Romero's Dawn of the Dead from 1978. It's one of those movies that even if the story itself wasn't great, the setting alone was so unique. You know, having it in that shopping centre, in the shopping mall, as they would call it in the US, the isolation that they all had, I just thought it was incredible. I watched it when I was very young, and even today, it's not aged. It's great. So I loved the original. I mean, when they announced the remake, this is when remakes were coming thick and fast.
Yeah.
I thought, oh no, I didn't know who Zack Snyder was because that was his directorial debut. And I thought, okay. And then I saw the trailer for it. And one thing that he done that was unique to me, I don't think I've seen anything before this, but running zombies. I thought, all right, okay, something to be scared of, because any zombie movie you could be scared of, but at the end of the day, you can just walk away from a zombie. But what he done was put them in that isolated situation in the shopping centre, but this time they're running zombies, so it's hard to get away from them.
Yeah.
So I just think that with the remake, they had to do something different to stand out from the original.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say the remake was better than the original, but I do think that the remake stands on its own 2 feet. What do you think?
I agree. It's a film that I went in with pretty low expectations. You're right, it was his directorial debut. I feel like in 2002, with 28 Days Later, it kind of breathed new life into the zombie genre, and Dawn of the Dead followed in that foot, and it is a good remake, I have to say. Like you, I do prefer the original. Certainly, you know, one of the best zombie films ever made. But no, Dawn of the Dead's the best zombie remake out there, certainly, I think. Without a doubt. And yeah, I mean, Zack Snyder's there's a film out at the moment, isn't there, called Army of the Dead. He's kind of returned to zombie stuff, which I haven't seen yet. I'm sure you probably have.
Yeah, seen it.
Yeah, okay. You've reviewed. Okay, I'm intrigued. I'm going to check that out. But no, I agree with you. Dawn of the Dead, good remake. But yeah, do love the original. Now, a bad film. Let's talk about a bad remake here. This is one that I only watched the other day. Well, not the other day, sorry. It's been a few weeks. Cabin Fever.
Oh, I forgot about that one.
I mean, what? Why? I mean, Cabin Fever was good. I liked Cabin Fever. I didn't quite buy into all the hype. I find Eli Roth a little overrated, personally. Yeah, it was a perfectly good film. I mean, it came out in, what was it, 2002, I think, 2003. And I'm like, you've got
the
a
original,
film that's not even 15 years old and remaking a film. This film made the original film look like Citizen Kane of horror films. This is terrible. It's badly acted. It takes the more gory approach, and that's all it's really trying to go for. The characters are just completely bland, and I absolutely hated it, and I know it's sitting on a 0% on Rotten Tomatoes as well, which is quite an achievement. Have you seen it?
Yeah, I've seen it. I've seen both of them. Yeah, I found it very bizarre. I think when it comes to American remakes, I think the time difference between the 2002 original and the remake from 2016, I think 14 years is probably the shortest time it's taken to do an American to an American remake. And I found it bizarre. And Eli Roth was like part of this remake.
Yeah.
I think he produced it or something.
Yeah.
And I thought, that's pointless. I watched the trailer for it and I thought, that's pointless. But part of me, because I'm a horror fan, I was intrigued to watch it to see if it was any good. And lo and behold, it was terrible. I just don't understand why. Like, that's the only thing you can ask yourself is why?
Yeah.
Maybe in 25, 30 years, do something different, if there's something different to tell.
Yeah.
But the fact that they remade it 14 years after didn't do anything different to what they've done in the original, I don't understand why they even attempted that. Cabin Fever wasn't brilliant to begin with. The original one is good.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. But if you're going to choose a horror movie to remake, choose something that is either really bad so you can improve on it, or choose something that's something that would give you a challenge.
Yeah.
They never succeeded in anything. They never done anything with that. So yeah, I agree. That's one of the worst. I forgot all about it as well. I never put it on my list.
Yeah. Well, I tried. You're the lucky one then, because I'm still trying to forget about it. I'm like I've been having therapy for the last few weeks, you know. But so completely and utterly unnecessary. It's like you said. Maybe if the film was 30 years old, it could be updated with new effects and so forth. But no, I mean, it's not even 15 years old. It's just so what's one of your bad? What's one of your bad remakes?
So let's go. You know, the funny thing is that I've got a list of good, I've got a list of bad, and I've got a list that's in between that I don't know where I would put it, but they're not bad or great.
Okay.
My smallest list is the worst ones, which is strange because you would think with remakes you wouldn't love remakes, but I don't have a big list. But I'll start with 2008's Prom Night.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Now, I went to the cinema to see this. I think the best thing about this was the advertising. I think it made it look like a semi-decent movie, something that intrigued me to see. So I went to the cinema to see it. I wasn't expecting much, so I didn't have high hopes for it. But even that, I still didn't like it. Idris Elba was in it. Brittany Snow was in it. There was some big names in this film that drew me towards it. And obviously, I loved the original. So I thought, I'll go and check this out. But this was more of a detective movie rather than a good old-fashioned zombie, a good old-fashioned horror movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, if I had to, at this moment in time, I think this is probably worse than Cabin Fever to me anyway. There was nothing about this that I liked. Nothing mysterious, nothing great. Wasn't funny, wasn't scary. It's a movie that I've actually saw it once. Once was enough. I didn't like it. I don't know if you saw it, but what do you think if you've seen it?
Oh, I agree. I don't like it. It's really got nothing going for it. A slasher movie, at the end of the day, slasher fans expect some good kills at least. Even if the acting or the storyline aren't good, memorable kills, something that's going to stay with you, and just nothing. And I'll be honest, right? This might sound like sacrilege. I'm not a huge fan of the 1980 original. I like it. I do like it, but it's by no means one of my favourite slasher films.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I prefer Prom Night 2 and Prom Night 3 to the first one.
Okay.
I like their style. But I like the original. But it's a good one to remake because you can improve on the original, but they didn't. They just couldn't do it. So yeah,
they made just a run of the mill, as basic as it gets, slasher movie, and just with no really redeeming features, in my opinion. I do like the original. I know the original's talked about a lot though, because it is being one of the better slasher films from the golden age. It's just one that I've never loved. There's actually a slasher film that came out in the very same year that I prefer, and that's Terror Train, also with Jamie Lee Curtis. Now, that's a slasher film I really do like. But I agree. Prom Night was on my list, actually. Right. It was on my list as well. So a good one. For me, this is a remake that I prefer to the original. I do apologise to Wes Craven for that, but The Hills Have Eyes 2006.
It's on my list, and I 100% agree. It's
I do
100 times better.
Yeah, I do like the original. Don't get me wrong. I do like the original. It's very much a cult horror film. Admittedly, it's one of them films that probably hasn't aged as well as some other horror films from the period. But I thought the remake was really good. I thought it was a good remake, solid. The director, I'm probably pronouncing this incorrectly, Alexandre Aya, I think his name is.
That's right.
I thought he did a good job. And again, one of them films that probably benefited as well from some good practical effects. Quite visceral in places, and better than the original, in my opinion. So you're a fan as well.
Oh, 100%. I had high hopes for this one after I saw the trailer for it, and I agree the original didn't date very well. And this is a prime example of a horror movie that could have a remake. It would be doing well to get a remake, and that's what they've done with The House of Eyes. Already knew who Alexandra Aya was before this because I watched him in, we call it Switchblade Romance.
Oh yeah, Hot Tension, yeah.
Hot Tension or High Tension in the US, and I thought that was really good, and it had high tension in it. Now when I watched the House of Eyes remake, it was a very tense movie all the way through. I love the set. I don't think there's a bad thing I can say about this remake because it was incredible, and I think it was action-packed as well. See, when the Aaron Ashmore went back to that place to get his baby back.
Oh yeah.
It just turned into this like action survival horror, and I thought it was great. I had so many twists and turns. There was no one in that movie that was bad. Everyone was incredible. To the dad, played by Ted Levine.
Yeah.
Everybody was amazing. The bad guys were great. I wanted the bad guys to die so much. They were so good. There's nothing I can fault with The House of Eyes. It's one of the best horror remakes out there. One of the best.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Ted Levine, because you know what? I didn't even recognise him at first. It was only when he spoke because of his very distinct voice. Because he was the voice of the trucker in Roadkill, wasn't he? AKA Joyride.
Rusty Nail.
That's it. Yeah, Candy Cane. Where's
Candy Cane?
But yeah, good remake. So what's a good one for you then? Another one.
So I had that on the list, but again, I've got a few on the list. So I'm going to go on to one that didn't get a nationwide release but due to its content, and that is I Spit on Your Grave from 2010.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, I completely didn't think about that actually when I was doing this. Yeah.
I mean that got a limited release. It did struggle with getting a company to release this movie theatrically because of the content of the film. And I think it's when you watch the original I Spit on Your Grave, it's almost like they made it just to be controversial.
Yeah.
Whereas the remake made it with a purpose. And the revenge part of this film was very satisfying. It's hard to watch. It's a rape revenge movie, so it is, it's quite a touchy subject for people. But after that initial scene it's hard to watch, it's so satisfying from the middle of the movie to the end of the movie, the way the woman gets revenge on the guys who attacked her at the start. And it was very well made, very tasteful as well, if you can even say that for that type of movie. And a lot of nice subtle nods to the original. I don't know if you've seen the original or the remake, but there's some really nice nods where she's at the petrol station or the gas station, and the guy's putting the gas in, and it comes to $19.78, and that was the year the original came out. Little things like that. That's what makes remakes work well, because they're taking the source material and doing their own thing. But yeah, I think I Spit on Your Grave though was a very powerful remake.
I watched it for the very first time quite recently, actually. My fiance bought, there's 3 of them, isn't there? She bought all 3 films, I believe.
Yeah, in the pack.
I'm not going to lie, they are films I struggle to stomach. They are brutal. They are brutal, certainly. I've seen the original as well, which was obviously a video nasty, wasn't it? It was banned for a long time.
Yeah.
They're not really my kind of films, but I appreciate how well made it was, certainly. The subject matter is obviously very disturbing in that. But yeah, I will agree. I had to kind of leave the room on a couple of points watching it because you know, rape is something that I really kind of struggle to watch in films. But no, overall, no, I'd say I Spit on Your Grave was, yes, I think it was a good remake. I don't know why I didn't think of it, actually, when I was doing this. But like you said earlier, there's so many, aren't there? There's so many to kind of sift through.
Yeah, and I think this one is superior to the original. I think some people might like the original because it is a classic now, or it's classed as a classic, or a video nasty. But to me, if I'm being honest with myself, I Spit on Your Grave remake is a lot better. And it deals with the subject matter in a more tasteful way. Yeah,
I agree there. So bad one. Well, this is a guilty pleasure. This is a film that's so bad, but I love it. I love it because it's unintentionally hilarious, and that's because of one thing and one man in this film.
No. I know.
Do you know what it's going to be?
Is it Nicolas Cage?
You've got it. 2006's The Wicker Man. Completely and utterly unnecessary. You know, I love the original 73 film. It's obviously, you know, a British horror classic. This film I just treat as a comedy. It's a really bad movie, but I can't help but love it. It makes me laugh so much because, I mean, where else are you going to see Nicolas Cage dressed up as an animal punching a woman out? Where are you going to see him with loads of CG bees screaming, the bees, the bees? It's nobody does overacting like Nicolas Cage. It's an absolute mess of a film. It's terrible, but it does make me laugh. But it's not supposed to make you laugh. What about your thoughts on Wicker Man? Was that on your list?
It wasn't on my list for one of the worst because I didn't see it all.
Okay,
so I watched half of the movie, and I just couldn't get through it. I just thought it was so bad. So if I watched it all, I would definitely put it on the list. But I thought it would be cheating if I put it on the list, knowing that I didn't watch it all. But yeah, from what I watched about 40 minutes, and it was so bad. It was terrible. I could easily put it on a worst list and be confident that it is one of the worst remakes ever. But yeah, it's just so bad. The only redeeming thing about it is the funniness of Nicolas Cage, and that's it. But apart from him, no, I mean, like, there's nothing redeeming about it at all.
Not a remake, but there's another horror film that I find unintentionally funny. It's a really bad film. It's one of M. Night Shyamalan's worst films. The Happening with Mark Wahlberg. It's so funny. If you treat that film like a comedy, it's an absolute gem. But it's not supposed. So what's one of your worst ones then? What's on the bad list?
Right. Next one we'll probably mention The Fog from 2005.
Got that as well.
Tom Welling and Maggie Grace. Now, again, this is one that's got a good cast. You've got Maggie Grace, who was like big because of Lost. You've got Tom Welling, who was big at the time from Smallville. You've got Selma Blair. So it had quite the cast. And the trailer, I'll be honest, the trailer actually made it look okay. But again, it's one of these ones, I only seen this once, so I don't remember everything about it, but it's just one of these ones that was just so bland and boring. And they took, this is why I don't understand how it's bad. They've taken a script from John Carpenter, a script that's so good that it's hard to go wrong with a script like that. But it's almost like they tried their hardest just to make it bad. I don't know. I don't know the purpose of that. I think The Fog, though, it is one of these films that they may get a third chance or a second chance of a remake at some point because the story is so good. And I think the original Fog's really good. And it's, in fact, it's excellent. But I think it's one of the remakes, or one of the originals that could be doing with a decent remake. But the 2005 Fog wasn't it.
No. It's a complete CG fest, isn't it? The CG is horrible. It's horrendous. It's just, when CG is used like that, it's very detracting. It's very jarring. And like you said, a good cast, but the film's just lifeless. It's just devoid of any kind of scares. And the original, the 80 film, is one of my favourite Carpenter films. It is one of my personal favourite of his movies. And yeah, I agree. That's pretty high up on the list for me for worst remakes. Definitely. So onto a good one now, or at least one that I really like. Now, I prefer the original. I understand why this film was made because there's a lot of people that don't do foreign language films. 2002's The Ring. with Naomi Watts. I think of all the Asian horror films that have been remade by Hollywood, this is the best one. I think this is the best US remake of an Asian horror film. I think it was really well directed by Gore Verbinski. Again, I prefer the Japanese original, but yeah, I mean, what did you think to this? I thought it was a job well done. It's just kind of a shame that they have a need to make all these foreign language films because there are people put off by, subtitles and whatnot.
Yeah. I think this is where we might get controversial. But
okay,
it's not on any of my lists. It wasn't on the worst and it wasn't on the best.
Yeah.
There's something about American remakes to the Asian horrors that I don't like.
Okay. Yeah.
I just feel like it's almost like when you watch the film, you think it should have Asians in it and have subtitles. Yeah. It's just something about it. It's just like I don't see any American remake. I don't see any purpose behind it. I prefer the Japanese originals.
Oh yeah.
I prefer like The Grudge. Is it One Missed Call? The Ring? All those types of movies. I think it's better staying in-house. And if Japan want to make a remake of The Ring, then that's probably going to be more interesting for me.
Yeah.
I think they would do it better. I thought The Ring was good though. I think if you're looking at all these foreign remakes, I think The Ring's probably one of the best remakes for a horror, one that's came from a foreign country.
Yeah.
But there's something about The Ring that I just didn't like. I think there was something missing from it for me. I couldn't get behind it. I like the idea of it. When you watch the videotape, 7 days you're going to die. And there was some frightening scenes as well within the tape and out with the tape. But for me, there was something missing. I think it didn't really get good until the last 10 minutes either. So I can understand why a lot of people love it because it has got a cult following, the original and the remake. But for me, I couldn't get into it. It could also be the fact that back in 2002, I was so much into my slashers that I couldn't see past that at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know what it was, but I couldn't get into the Ring. So it's one that we'll probably disagree on.
Yeah, no, that's cool. Okay, we're not going to get into a punch up here. Everyone's got their own view at the end of the day. It's perfectly cool. I mean, to be honest, right, most Asian horror movie remakes I really don't like. I'm a big fan of Asian horror. I love the original Shutter, the Thai horror film, Ju-on, The Grudge. None of the American remakes are better than the Asian versions. None of them. Yeah. But no, I did like The Ring, but yeah, the Japanese Ring, one of my favorite Asian horror films, certainly. So what's a good one for you now then?
So let's see. The next one, it's going to sound like a bit of a carbon copy of my last one, but my next one is the 2009's The Last House on the Left.
Oh, okay, interesting. Yeah, I nearly put that in there. I was like, do I or don't I?
It's very similar to I Spit on Your Grave and a very similar premise back in the 70s to now. So you've got the original directed by Wes Craven that to me, it's only really popular now because of its cult status. But I watched it recently and it didn't hold up well. It was only made to shock people and that's it. It never had any type of story. And they just wanted to shock people, which is fine because back in the early 70s, they wanted to see who made the scariest movie or the most shocking movie. And it worked back in the 70s, and that's why that was one of the video nasties.
Yeah.
But then when the remake came about, I think everything about the remake was a whole lot better. They took the same storyline, but they gave it a purpose. And I think they dealt with the subject matter a lot better, just like the remake of I Spit on Your Grave. So yeah, you've got scenes in it that are hard to watch, but after that, it's a whole lot more satisfying watching the outcome and the revenge part of the movie. And I like the fact that the parents in The Last House on the Left were a lot better for me than the original. So yeah, I think everything about the remake of The Last House on the Left completely blew the original out of the water.
I agree. I'll be honest, right? I love Craven. I love Wes Craven and that. But I've never been a big fan of Last House on the Left. I like it. I just don't love it as much as some people. But I understand it played a really important part in kind of like the evolution of exploitation films and that. But I agree, actually. I think I do prefer the 2009 remake.
Yeah.
It is well made for what it is. As you said, it certainly does have them scenes that are hard to watch. One scene in particular, especially. But no, yeah, a good remake. It was very close, actually. To be honest, it was almost in my favorite remakes in that. But do you find like with the original, because obviously I know it was like it had a raw kind of power to it and that, but it's a little, it's quite comical in places as well, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it was intentional, but yeah, it was almost like it was supposed to be comical as well.
Yeah,
But that didn't pay off for me. I think the scenes that I was supposed to laugh at, I said to myself, "Am I supposed to laugh there? Because it's not funny."
yeah, yeah. But I agree there. Now it's funny actually because you mentioned a film a few minutes ago that's now on my list for worst. So to me, I've gone like one end of the spectrum here. We had 2002's The Ring, which I liked, and this is an Asian horror movie remake that is basically the bottom of the barrel. This is the worst one in my opinion from what I've seen, and that is One Missed Call.
Right. Okay.
It's just awful. It's just oh my god! It's just a CG fest. It's just it's completely devoid of any suspense, of any scares. It uses quite a lot of CG in places. I do like the Japanese original. I think that's quite a good Asian horror movie. This was just terrible. Have you seen it? The One Miss Call remake?
I have seen it, but I've got a foggy memory on it. I think it's because some of them are very similar,
Yeah.
like Shutter, One Missed Call, and there's a few others like it. So when I watched the remake, I really don't remember it. I remember not liking it.
Yeah.
Who's the main actress in One Missed Call?
I've actually forgotten.
Yeah.
I've genuinely forgotten. I just remember it leaving a very like bad taste in my mouth after seeing it, and I've never returned to it.
Yeah.
Like the one you just mentioned, Shutter. Okay, I don't really rate the American remake, but it's still better than One Missed Call.
Yeah.
It still manages to be better. And same with 2004's The Grudge. I don't really love it. I think it's okay as remakes go, but to me, this was the of the ones that I've seen, this is like the worst Asian horror movie remake.
Yeah, Matt, I remember hating it, so that's all you need to know.
Yeah. So what's a bad one for you now then?
So let's go on to. I don't know if you're going to have this on a list at all, but it might be controversial. But one of the worst ones for me was 2010's A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, I knew that was as soon as you said 2010. I knew what was coming. This is where it's going to get controversial.
Yeah, so it had so much promise.
Yeah.
I feel really bad for Jackie Earle Haley because he was phenomenal as Freddy Krueger. The look of him was bad.
Yeah.
And just the whole story itself just felt like it wasn't in A Nightmare on Elm Street movie. It had so much promise and so much potential, but again, it's one of the ones that just fell flat in its face. And I don't know if it's because the original is so good that there are some movies that you just don't need to remake because there's nothing you can improve on.
Yeah,
you can change. And I love the original, and I don't hate the remake because I love the original. I just hate the remake because I don't think it's a good movie at all.
Yeah, I perfectly agree. If something's not broke, why fix it? The original Nightmare on Elm Street, it's a classic. It's probably one of my favorite all-time horror films. It's certainly one of my favorite horror films of the 80s. And people are going to crucify me for saying this. I don't quite hate the remake. I don't like it. I really don't care for it. I think I've certainly seen a lot worse remakes, but it's like you said, it is completely unnecessary. And in Jackie Earle Haley's defense, he was never going to live up to Robert Englund.
Yeah,
Robert Englund has cemented himself in that role. He's Freddy Krueger. And I agree with you. I think Jackie Earle Haley did a good job. I think he did a good job. Unfortunately, a lot of people, rose-tinted glasses, and Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. Whoever got that role, I don't think they were ever going to be able to compare.
Yeah.
But it took the whole, I've watched it a few times, admittedly, and I don't know what stops me from hating it, actually. I don't know, because it doesn't copy and paste the original exactly. there are certainly moments in the film that the scene where he comes out of the wall.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just CG. It looked better in the original with practical effects.
Absolutely.
And just like the CG is quite jarring at times in that as well. But we didn't get a sequel, did we? I know there were talks, and because it didn't do well critically and all that.
Thing is, it still made over $100 million at the box office worldwide. So, like, it had the audience, and they could have easily done a sequel to it, but made it good. But I guess they knew themselves that critically, it just wasn't good enough.
No, you're right. It was a box office hit, and I remember reading rumors that Jackie O'Haley had actually signed like a contract for 3 films and all that, but that obviously all got scrapped and that. But no, I agree. It's a film that I don't particularly care for. And there is another film actually that's going to be on the list later on that's probably going to cause controversy as well, because I know there are people that like it. So we're on to the good ones now. Now, again, I think that some people are probably going to riot by me saying this. I'm not saying it's one of the best remakes ever made, but I like it. I think it's good. 2013's Evil Dead. Yeah, I like it. Love's a strong word. I don't love it. I love the original 81 film, and I think as soon as Evil Dead when it was announced that there was going to remake it, I was like, the thought of it just made me shudder. I'm like, oh my God. And I thought, as mainstream horror films go, it was pretty hardcore. I thought that tonally it was a very dark film, obviously quite a contrast to the original. What do you think?
Well, this is where we're going to get even more controversial.
You hate it, don't you?
No, I think the 2013 Evil Dead is probably the greatest horror remake of all time.
Oh, okay, interesting. Cool.
I think it's on my list. I think it's absolutely incredible. Everything about it, and again, this is where we get controversial. Everything about this blows the original away for me. Yeah. I just feel like the original was good. I actually felt like Evil Dead 2 was a remake of the original.
Technically, it is. It's essentially a reimagining. Now, that I was going to put that in the list because even though it's called Evil Dead 2 Dead by Dawn, it's not actually a sequel per se.
Yeah, so I think that Evil Dead was like a tryout. In fact, we had Within the Woods in 1978. It's like a little 20-minute short that Sam Raimi made with no budget. He got some money from it, so he made Evil Dead. And then he got some money from that, so he'd done it again with Evil Dead 2. So I think it was trial and error with the first few Evil Dead movies, whereas the remake was just something completely amazing for me. Like, I think it was the bloodiest movie I've ever saw.
Yeah.
What else? What else can I say about Evil Dead? I just think it was amazing. I went to see it in the cinema with my wife, and we both felt sick when we were watching it. And I've never felt like that for a horror movie before in the cinema. I felt it when I was a kid because I didn't really understand it. But as an adult, you should know that it's not real. But when I was watching this remake, it felt so real, even though it was so fake. And I don't know. I can't praise it enough. I just think the Evil Dead remake is the greatest horror remake of all time.
Yeah, and to be honest, it's a shame really that we didn't get a sequel because it was actually a box office success. It made money. Its reviews were generally good. Its reviews were very good. We didn't obviously get a sequel. I did like the director's follow-up film, Don't Breathe, in 2016. I thought that was a really good movie.
Yeah,
but no, it's a film that I really like. And I know there's some people out there that are like, it's sacrilege to kind of say that. I do love the original, certainly. But no, I like this kind of very tonally dark approach that this film took.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I was worried. I thought I saw fire in your eyes actually when I was saying that the Evil Dead was. I was like, oh my God, I thought you were going to hulk out or something, Yeah. But So what's another remake for you? One that gets a thumbs up.
Well, Evil Dead was on the list, but we'll skip that just now.
Okay.
I think the next one down will go to 2003's.
Don't tell me. Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, absolutely.
Yeah.
Do you know, I actually loved this movie before I saw it. Again, this is when back in 2003, I saw the teaser trailer for this. And I thought, oh, wow, this looks pretty good. Even though you didn't see much in the teaser trailer, it was just all audio. and then I saw the trailer for it, which is probably my most watched trailer of all time.
Yeah.
So I already was so hyped up for this film. And then when I went to see it in the cinema, I wasn't disappointed at all. I think, again, this might be controversial, but I think this surpasses the original. I do love the original. It doesn't mean the original's bad. I absolutely love it for its time. But it's very dated, the acting especially. I just think that if you're ever going to update a classic horror movie, then this is the way to do it. Some would say it's very music video-like because the director was a horror music video director.
Marcus Nispel, yeah.
Yeah, and he's on the list a few times. But I think the style of it worked with the way he wanted to go. And this is one horror movie that it's got a similar story, but it's completely different to the original.
Yeah.
In terms of tone, the character names, the way it pans out. So I think if you're going to do your own version of a classic movie, this is the way to do it.
Yeah, I'll admit I do like it. It's not a copy and paste job, like you've kind of said, that it does veer the story, the film in a somewhat different direction. And Ali Ermey just steals the show every scene that he's in. Ali Ermey is great.
He's amazing.
No, I actually think it's a good remake. And I'm always hesitant to say that to people because the original is an all-time classic. I do prefer the original personally, but I do really like the remake because, I mean, the original, certainly for its time, had a very kind of raw, visceral quality to it. And it's easy to see why it caused a huge impact when it was released. Very much kind of a proto-slasher film as well. But no, I'm with you. It's a good... Just out of curiosity, did you like the prequel, the one that followed afterwards?
Yeah, I would say that's probably my third favourite in the franchise, I believe. I think it goes... The original, the remake's my favourite, then it's the original, and then Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning.
Yeah.
I for the life of me, I don't know why they decided to stop that and go into another timeline with Texas Chainsaw 3D.
Yeah.
If they stuck with the prequel timeline, it would have been a lot better. We already had established characters and established actors like Arlie Ermey at the time.
Yeah.
And he was still alive at the time that they could have done a sequel to it, but they decided not to, and that was bad, a bad decision because those two movies were a great duo. If you watched the beginning and then the remake, or even the way it came out, you would have a great time watching both of them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I agree with what you said as well regarding there's like a level of polish to the films where, because obviously it's Platinum Dune Studio, Michael Bay's production company as well. You said there's more Platinum Dunes film to come, I'm sure. Another Marcus Nispel film on the list.
You never know.
So, yeah, on to the bad one for me. All right, I'm just going to say I haven't got much to say on this film. I've seen it once. I remember really, really not liking it, but I haven't returned to it. But that is Poltergeist, the remake. Yeah, again, just lifeless, flat, tries to be scary, just fails. I like the original. The original is a good 80s horror film. Not one of my favorites of all time or anything like that, but it's a good film. I haven't really got much to say on this movie. I just remember walking away really not liking it. What about yourself?
Well, I think I'm glad you brought it up because Poltergeist is on my list as well.
Okay.
But one thing I want to say about this is a fantastic example as to why you should always remake horror movies, whether they're good or bad, because I thought the original was good, but then I watched the remake and I thought the remake was terrible. So then I went back and watched the original and I appreciated it even more. Yeah. And I liked it even more than I thought I did. So sometimes if a remake is bad, it's not necessarily a bad thing for the original. It doesn't ruin the original. Sometimes it could improve the original without you realizing it. So that's a perfect example that whether a remake comes out as good or bad, it could benefit. The original could benefit from it. And I think Poltergeist is a good example because I didn't like the remake. I thought it was going to be good because, again, the cast looked good, but it failed and then I went back to the original and loved the original. So great example for being a bad remake that improves the original.
That's the silver lining, isn't it, of
Yep.
the situation, I guess. Yeah. I didn't see it on the big screen, but I did watch it, I think, when it hit Netflix. But yeah, so what's a bad one for you then?
So a bad one for me. Now, I'm going to have to do this as a duo because they tried it twice. They tried to remake this movie twice and failed twice. And that is 2008 and 2017's Day of the Dead.
Oh, God. Yeah.
So we had the 2008 Day of the Dead, which wasn't the worst one, but it was bad. And I think the reason it was so bad is I was expecting it to be like Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
Because they'd done it just a few years after Dawn of the Dead. And I thought, oh, good, we're getting a remake of Day of the Dead. Let's hope it's as good as what Dawn of the Dead was for its original.
Yeah.
And it was terrible. It was so cheap. Everything about it was cheap and nasty. And then they announced they were going to do a remake again, Day of the Dead Bloodline, with a little bit of a twist to it. So I thought, okay, I'm interested. And then I saw the trailer and I instantly knew that this was going to be even worse than the 2008 remake.
And that's saying something. Jeez.
Yeah, it's hard to do. So that's something that they achieved. They made it worse than the 2008 remake. Both of them were terrible, not worthy of a remake whatsoever. I think Day of the Dead still has its day. I think we will get a remake of it eventually. Maybe Zack Snyder will dip his toe in it. I don't know. But yeah, Day of the Dead and Day of the Dead Bloodline, both terrible remakes.
Yeah, I haven't seen Bloodline. The one that you're on about, 2008, didn't that star Mia Savari?
Yeah, Mina Savari and Nick Cannon.
Yes. Yeah, awful. I don't think I watched it all. I don't think I could actually get through it. I'm not a masochist, unfortunately. But it was just, And the original Day of the Dead is one of my favourite zombie films. I think that film boasts some of Tom Savini's best work, actually. I love the original.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, I agree. Funnily enough, I forgot to put it on I haven't put it on the list. That would have been on there. So yeah, completely agree 100% with that. So on to a good one now. Now, this to me is one of the best remakes out there. And I love the original. The original's 1956. The remake was released in 78. It's sci-fi horror, Invasion of the Body Snatchers.
Oh, okay.
Directed by Philip Kaufman, obviously great cast. You've got obviously Donald Sutherland, Leonard Nimoy's in there, Jeff Goldblum, Veronica Cartwright. I love the original. The original's a sci-fi horror classic, but I think this is a remake that holds up really well to the first film. I've always found the Body Snatchers to be a really scary concept. It's that whole kind of loss of identity, who to trust, where to run. I think this was a solid remake with a great ending. I think it has one of the bleakest endings in horror. What do you think?
I can't comment on it too much. I have seen it, and I remember liking it, but I've not seen it in years.
Okay.
It's the same with the original as well. I think I actually watched the original more recently than the 1978 one. So I can't say too much about it. I know that obviously you've got the scene like, oh, or that stuff.
The end, yeah.
Yeah, so, it's very iconic. When I think of remakes, I never really think of older remakes because some people think remakes started in the noughties. Yeah. But obviously they've been on for years. But yeah, I can't really comment on it too much. In the original, though, the reason I watched the original was because of the main actor. Do you remember the main actor?
Kevin McCarthy.
Kevin McCarthy, yeah. I think he's a great actor. He's in one of my favourite horror films, which is the Midnight Hour. I don't know if you saw that from 1985.
Yeah, great film.
So yeah, that's the reason I watched that one. But I can't remember if I preferred the original or the remake. I know
he actually makes a cameo. Kevin McCarthy actually makes a cameo in the 78 remake.
Oh, does he?
Yeah, he actually does. It was a nice little cameo, actually. But yeah, that ending is, spoiler alert. I'm hoping most people have seen it. Just the ending's really well done because you assume that he's still human and he's pretending to be an alien, pretending to fit in, to avoid detection. And it turns out, no, they got him. Yeah. They got him. Yeah, I love Invasion. I love the original and the remake. And there was a 93 version. There's actually been another one as well called The Invasion with, is it Daniel Craig and Nicole Kidman? Yeah.
2007.
Haven't seen it. Haven't actually seen that.
Neither have I. I've not seen the 93 version either, Body Snatchers. I'm not seen that either.
Okay. It's set at a military base directed by Abel Ferrara, obviously famous for Driller Killer.
All right.
Yeah, the 78 to me, one of my favorite remakes. So what's a good one for you?
So the next one, I've got 3 more, but what should I talk about first? Right, we're going to talk about 2009's Friday the 13th by Marcus Nispel.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this will be a controversial one for a lot of people, because I know that I know people who hate this movie, absolutely hate it, and I don't know if it's on your bad list, but to me, it's on my good list.
Yeah,
and I'll be honest, it is the best Friday the 13th movie. I've said it. I just think, I don't know if you remember, but I think it was the first 20 minutes or so was just non-stop adrenaline rush. All these people dying at the beginning of the movie, and I remember watching it thinking, right, these are the main actors, this is the main cast, and they're all getting killed off one by one within the first 20 minutes of the movie. And then there's a scene where he's running towards the girl with the machete, and then he does that to the guy in the head.
Yeah,
I'm like, oh Jesus, the kills in this are great. Jason is menacing, and that's the way Jason should be. That's the way he should be remembered. This big, tall, massive guy who can kill anyone. He was an unstoppable force of nature. I don't have anything bad to say about it. I will say, though, when I first saw it, I thought it was good, and I thought, okay, they could do better. But then when I rewatched the original, rewatched the rest of the sequels, I'm like, do you know what? The remake is actually really good. I don't know. Some people might not call it a remake. They might call it a kind of reboot.
Yeah.
But yeah, for me, I think it's a solid slasher and a great horror remake.
Oh, okay. My view, we're disagree. Yeah, I never took to it. I wish I could. I wish I could. I wanted to really like it, and I just didn't. But I will give you. I really, Derek Mears was great as Jason Voorhees, really bringing that physical presence, that intensity to the role. I didn't really care for it. It's not on my bad list though. It's not actually on the bad list or anything like that. It's kind of like in the mid-range kind of thing for me. But no, the original Friday the 13th in 1980 is still my favourite. Maybe nostalgia plays a part of that, I think.
Yeah.
But that's one of my favourite slasher movies. Just the gore effects by Tom Savini. I love that anonymity of the killer that in the original film, people forget, like, you don't know who the killer is during the course of the movie.
Yeah.
But no, the remake, I just wasn't really a fan. I preferred Marcus Nispel's other Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So if you had to choose between them two, interestingly, Texas Chainsaw or Friday the 13th, which is the better film for you?
Texas Chainsaw for me.
Okay. Yeah. Because it's a shame, though. I'll admit, I would have liked, because it ends in a way that the original 1980 does. Jason comes out the water, doesn't he? And it's a shame that I know there's a lot of issues going on, but it's a shame that we didn't get a sequel.
Yeah.
To it.
Or anything else. Like, all we've got is a game.
Yeah.
And they had to stop that as well due to the whole Victor Miller issue. So yeah, we'll just need to wait and hope that we get either a sequel, a remake, reboot, or whatever. I'm sure we'll get something in the future eventually.
What's interesting, Jared Padalecki in it, his co-star, and now this could be on your list, I don't know, but his co-star from Supernatural was also in a slasher movie remake released at around the same time, early 2009. But we're gonna see if we come. Yeah, see if we come to that one.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
So on the worst now. Now there's going to be people that probably hate me for saying this, but this is because, like with Nightmare on Elm Street, you've got a remake that's basically trying to be up there with a classic, an absolute classic. For me, I really, really don't like 2006's Black Xmas. And I've wanted to. I've tried to. I've returned to it a few times. I really don't like the film. I love the original 74 movie. It's one of my all-time favorite slasher movies. I love the suspense. I love the atmosphere. I love that. I'm a big less is more kind of guy. Great air of mystery. The killer, you see very little. This film goes for shock value, certainly, resorting to cannibalism and just eating the eyeballs and all that. And I hate it. What about yourself?
I don't hate it. I don't love it either, though. I don't love it, but I don't hate it. Now, this is a rare occasion where I watched the remake before the original.
Oh, okay.
So I went to the cinema to see Black Christmas 2006, and I thought it was decent. So I didn't know that the story was completely different to the original. We had a family, a cannibalistic family, etc. I just thought that was normal. I thought that's what the original was like. So I watched it. And one thing I'll give them their due, for a Black Christmas, for a Christmas horror movie, it was very Christmassy. It felt very Christmassy.
I will say that. I agree with that. It was, they captured the Christmas spirit. And
And again, it had a good cast, a good solid cast. So I thought it was a bit over the top and a bit strange, but I didn't find anything terrible about it because I didn't have anything to compare it to. And then I watched the original after it, and I thought, okay, the original is a lot better, a lot more simplistic, better style, more realistic horror movie. So obviously the original was a lot better, but I think what benefited, or I think what I thought was good about Black Christmas was I watched it before the original. Had I watched the original first, I maybe would have had it on the list.
Yeah.
But the fact that I watched it before it maybe helped it slightly.
Yeah. The actress, I'm actually trying to look up her name because her name is escaping me. One of the cast members in it, Katie Cassidy, that's it. Do you know she's been in three horror movie remakes?
A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Yeah, and one more.
Black Christmas, and she was in When a Stranger Calls.
Correct, spot on, man. Yeah, 2006, the very same year, in fact.
Yeah.
I really didn't like it. I don't think it's like one of the worst remakes, but again, just the original's such a great movie. The original's and then there's a 2019 Black Christmas, which I refuse to watch. I haven't seen it. But it just looks, I don't want to get all political, but it just looks like it's the poster campaign for girl power. It looks like they're bashing us across the head with girl power. And the fact that they reveal who the killers are in the trailer as well, to me, just screams terrible marketing as well. It just looks like an MTV music video from what I've seen of it. But I'm pretty certain, had I have seen 2019's, that would, I believe, firmly be on this list.
Yeah.
What's a bad one for you now then?
Well, I'm going to talk about 2019's Black Christmas.
God, Jesus. Yeah.
So at least I know you've not saw it. I think it's probably best that you don't watch this film if you've not. You don't miss anything. There's nothing interesting about it. Yes, it's very political. When I done a review for it, I tried to stay away from the political aspect, which I'll still try and do just now. It's a very political heavy movie. Yeah. And there's no getting away from it. But if you take that away, push that to the side, there's nothing about this film redeeming. They rely so much on the political aspects that they forget to give you a movie. Yeah. And like you said, if you want to quickly watch the movie, just watch the 2-minute trailer and that's it. That's honestly, that's the movie right there. Yeah. So you're not missing anything. If you decide to watch it, I'll be honest, just watch the trailer.
Yeah, and that's what put me off initially. I don't think Blumhouse, it's a Blumhouse film, isn't it? I don't think they had much faith in it because I only knew it was coming out about 2 months before it was released. And it's like, usually they market their films, well in advance. And I think they knew that they probably didn't have a good film on their hands. Yeah,
they started filming it in June. And then they brought it out in December. Yeah. So that's 6 months. Yeah. You're looking at least a year to make a movie. They only made it in 6 months.
Says it all, doesn't it? Yeah. Rushed it.
I don't know why they rushed it. They could have made it good if they took all the political stuff out, took their time, took their time with it, then it might have been good. But they decided to rush that in there, right in the middle of the political power. You know, to try and get, it's what's trending right now. So I think they tried to cash in on that, and they just failed.
Just calling it Black Christmas. I mean, like just trying to use that original film's title as a selling point and that as well. Because the original film is like, it wasn't a big success. It wasn't a success or anything like that, but it has an ardent fan base. It has a huge cult following, the original Black Christmas. I think, it's regarded as being one of the very best now. I absolutely love the original. But yeah, so a good one now for me. Now, this is where it gets interesting because I'm kind of moving up to my top 3 now. And the interesting thing about this, all of these remakes, the next 3 on my list, all came out in the same decade. And the original films all come out in that same decade as well. It's really bizarre. But so the next film on my list, we talked about this briefly. It's been a long time since I've seen it. I don't own it, but I remember loving it. And that's The Blob, released in 88. Which,
so I know what the other...
Yeah,
I know what your other ones are going to be.
Yeah. The original released in 58. I believe Steve McQueen, the king of cool, Hollywood's coolest actors, was actually in that film. Sci-fi horror classic, but to me, the remake just surpasses it. And again, I think that's down largely to the great practical effects, which still hold up really well now. And I like the fact that it wasn't just a blob. They managed, there's a lot of great body horror in the movie that it can, expend and, for example, go through all different kind of environments. I think it's a really good remake. Again, just kind of the concept is generally the same. But, despite some kind of like bad green screening from what I remember near the end of the movie that might look a little dated now, the practical effects are still fantastic overall. I know you haven't seen this film for a long time, have you?
Yeah, but I remember liking it. I never saw the original, but I remember liking the 1980s, The Blob. The only thing I really remember about it was Kevin Dillon.
Oh, right, yeah.
I'm not saying it's a forgettable movie. It's just been a long time since I saw it.
Yeah.
But I do remember liking it, and one of the biggest reasons was the practical effects.
Yeah. It was really that kind of it, because you've already worked out, haven't you? You're like Sherlock Holmes, man. You've already worked out what my next two films are, haven't you?
Well, at least one of them.
Yeah. What's the next film for you then?
So the next one I'll mention would be, and again, this could be controversial due to how good the original was, but next we're going to talk about 2011's Fright Night.
Oh, interesting. Yeah. I didn't see that one coming. I've got to be honest. I didn't see that coming. Yeah. So, yeah.
Right. Well, there's something about this that I love my isolated horror movies. I say this once a month, I think. I just love the horror movies that are set somewhere where help is not going to come straight away. And this little place in Las Vegas, it's like a new housing estate.
Yeah.
And there's nobody around, especially because everyone's in Las Vegas. And there's this vampire just killing his neighbours. It's so good that, and again, the actors in it are great. You get Colin Farrell, Imogen Poots, Toni Collette, Anton Yelchin. The 4 of them just totally carry this movie. You've even got McLovin, Christopher Mintz-Plasse, is in it as well. The cast is stellar, acting's great, the setting's brilliant, and they've done a really good job not to beat the original. Have you seen the original?
Oh, I love the original, 85.
Yeah. So I mean that is one of my all-time favourites. And I wasn't skeptical when they announced a remake. It's the usual, don't remake it, and I'm like, remake it, I don't care. And I loved it. I thought it was great. Not one of the best. It was one of my latest entries onto this list because I was contemplating not putting it on it because it's not amazing, but it's still good, and I think it's worthy of a mention.
Yeah. No, I agree. I actually enjoyed it. I did enjoy it. I do love the original. I do. The original is maybe my favourite vampire film of the 80s. It may be. Lost Boys is certainly up there, very close behind it. But no, I agree. I thought it was a perfectly fine remake. I do. I've only seen it once. I haven't seen it since it come off the cinema, though, so it probably needs a rewatch. I do believe Chris Sarandon, actually the vampire from the original, actually does make a cameo, doesn't he?
He does, yeah. He's the driver,
Yeah.
and the road scene. And again, it's nice little nods like that you appreciate.
Yeah, yeah. I remember he gets killed, doesn't he? I'm pretty
Yeah.
certain yeah. But no, I enjoyed it. Yeah, that's one that I didn't actually kind of consider actually when doing the list. But I tell you what, the original film has one of my favorite '80s horror movie posters. I
Yes,
love
absolutely.
I always remember as a little kid going into the VHS store and always seeing that VHS cover.
That's what I talk about all the time. That cover, as Fright Night, The Return of the Living Dead 2,
Oh yeah, yeah,
just and the people under the stairs. They had this little house. Then
yeah,
above it in the clouds, you've got like a skull or the vampire in that instance with Fright Night or a zombie or whatever. Just that style will always stick with me as a little kid.
yeah.
And that's again one of the reasons why I love the original so much, with that nostalgic factor.
Yeah, great practical effects as well for its time as
Absolutely.
well. I think with
Yeah.
Fright Night. But yeah, it's good choice. Now we're on the bad now, aren't we? Now this may be my worst remake, and there's a reason for it. I love the original, but this is just to me lazy filmmaking that is basically almost shot for shot, almost line for line, the same as the original. And you yes, 1960 Psycho, of course, getting a remake in '98, directed by Gus Van Sant. I mean, why? I mean, I understand it was an experiment. It was basically an experiment film, and that. It just, I mean, Gus Van Sant did a good film with Good Will Hunting, and then the next year he remakes Psycho, which is like to me like the granddaddy of contemporary horror films. Such an iconic movie. Vince Vaughn as Norman Bates. I mean, just one of the worst pieces of casting in horror movie history, in my opinion. Just why? It's just the same film. It's the exact same film. Yeah, I mean, what do you think? I don't even think it's worth wasting much oxygen on.
Yeah, the only thing I can say about it is I think Gus Van Sant's excuse was, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, in the sense of just remaking it
Yeah,
shot for shot. But if that's the case, then just don't remake it then, if you don't feel the need to change anything up. Because
yeah,
the original, again, I don't love black and white movies, but the original 1960 Psycho is one of my favourite horror movies of all time.
yeah,
It may be cliche to say that because everybody says that Shawshank Redemption is the best movie. Everybody says that Silence of the Lambs is the best horror movie, and Psycho. But it is. Psycho is one of the best horror movies for me. 1960, that is. So yeah, the remake was pointless.
I actually did a podcast on Psycho a little while ago. Really enjoyed doing it actually because it is one of the films I'm most well versed. I'm a huge Hitchcock fan. You know, some of his greatest films: Vertigo, Rear Window, North by Northwest, and Psycho. Psycho is probably my second favorite Hitchcock film. Vertigo is probably a number one. But yeah, it's such an iconic movie. You know, the shower scene alone is probably certainly one of the most iconic scenes in the history of horror, without a doubt. Bernard Herrmann's score, and yeah, just a completely pointless remake. It shouldn't even exist by rights. But yeah, so that's probably my worst remake. Now I know there's a lot of terrible remakes out there which I probably haven't seen. I've heard that Flatliners is terrible.
Oh, I forgot about that one. I've not seen it, and even if I did remember, it's not a horror really. So
Yeah, it's not. It's Joel Schumacher, wasn't it? The original,
yeah,
1990, I think.
yeah.
But yeah, I've not seen it, but I've heard it's absolutely terrible. But so, what's the next for you then? Bad.
I don't have any more bad.
Okay.
The rest of them are either good or on a category that I just wouldn't class them as bad or good. They're just kind of in between.
Okay. So what? All right. Let's go a good one then. One that you like.
So the last, I've got one more really good one that I think is worthy of being on the good list, and that is 2010's Mother's Day. Have you seen
With
that?
Rebecca De Mornay.
Yeah,
Okay, I haven't
my
seen
wife.
that yet.
Yeah, I love her. But yeah, it's kind of like it was made by I think it was Darren Lynn Bousman who done one of the Saw movies.
Okay.
So it's very gory. And again, it's one of these horror movies that I watched before the original.
Yeah.
But even if I watched the original first, I still would have liked the 2010s one. It's very underrated. If you look at the IMDb score, it's got quite a high rating for a horror remake. And I think it is more popular than the original, but it's a really good movie, a good story as well. Very gritty, very realistic. I won't mention too much about it because I think it is one that you'll benefit from watching. Like if you don't know anything about it, good cast. One of my favorite actors right now is Frank Grillo. Do you know Frank Grillo?
Oh, Frank Grillo from Captain America, Winter Soldier, and that. Yeah.
Crossbones. He's in it. He's one of the main actors in it, and he's great in it. Rebecca De Mornay, obviously, is the mother. Yeah. But that's all I'll say. But it is a really good, solid remake.
Okay. Yeah, it's one I do need to put on the watch list. It's just kind of like passed me by somehow. But yeah, I do like Rebecca De Mornay for more than one reason as well. I think she's she's a god.
One thing I'm going to say, you're talking about Katie Cassidy being in 3 remakes.
Yeah.
There's another actress that's in at least 3 remakes that I can think of, and that's Jamie King. Jamie King.
Why can't I think who she is?
She's the main star in My Bloody Valentine 3D.
I can't picture her.
The girl with the blonde hair and the ponytail.
Yeah, I can't actually visualize her. What else has she been in then?
She was in Mother's Day. Okay. And she was the sheriff woman in Silent Night from 2012.
Oh, right, yeah.
She's in Pearl Harbor.
Okay. So yeah, she's done 3 as well. God, she gets about then as well.
She might be in more. I'm sure she is because she does a lot of low budget stuff now.
Yeah.
And there's been a few low budget horror movies that are coming out recently that are remakes. I'm sure she's in a few more, but she's in at least 3 big ones.
Yeah, I kind of enjoyed Silent Night. I kind of enjoyed that film.
I thought it was okay.
Kind of a loose remake, if you will, of Silent Night, Deadly Night from '84. But well, I've got to. We're on the good now, aren't we? I'm losing track now.
Yeah, sorry, I've just went off the track there.
Oh,
but
no,
I just done a good, so you're onto a good as well now. Unless you've got another bad you want to talk about.
Well, there is. Is there another bad here? No, actually, I've got no more. I know there are some terrible ones out there still. I've heard that Martyrs is really bad, and I didn't really care for the Amityville Horror, but I wouldn't kind of like put it right at the bottom of the bunch or anything like that. So yeah, my 2 favorite good ones. 1986, directed by David Cronenberg. Of course, The Fly. Yes.
I don't do that.
I like the 58 original. I do like the original with Vincent Price. This is obviously quite different. Again, I think this film's just great practical effects. It's a love story at its core, a very tragic love story. I think the film has heart to it. And Gina Davis and Jeff Goldblum are just great together on screen with this film. I think this is a fantastic remake. What do you think? And this is my favorite Cronenberg film.
Yeah, that's the thing about The Fly. I love The Fly. I think The Fly is excellent. I'd never saw the original before, so I didn't know how different or similar it was to the original. When I think about The Fly, I don't really want to say anything because I compare it to another film that I know you're going to mention. But I think it is great. I just didn't ever see it as a remake. Even though I'd never seen the original before. There's one that we will talk about that I'll discuss why soon. But yeah, I do love The Fly. I love the practical effects. The ending was heartbreaking as well. So yeah, it's a horror movie with a meaning, with heart, basically. So yeah, it's more than just a gory horror movie with practical effects. It's a gory horror movie with great practical effects.
Oh yeah, they hold up tremendously well.
Yeah, and a fantastic storyline as well.
Yeah. I understand what direction you're going with as well on the last film, and that's what I was going to preface it with, because technically speaking, some people don't see it as a remake as such. So it's I fully get that. So what's the next film for you?
Well, that's me done with the good ones as well. The rest of the films that I've got on my list now are just films that are middle of the road that I would watch, and they're not fantastic. They don't break any grounds.
Okay.
So if you want, I can go through some of them.
Run through the list.
So I'm going to randomly say one of them, and that is Child's Play from 2019.
I liked it. I didn't love it, but I don't get the hate. I don't get the hate
Yeah.
around that film. But
I think what they done with that was they done something different. You know, like it's going to be hard to outdo Brad Dourif as the crazy Charles Lee Ray.
Yeah.
So just kind of change it up a bit. And some people say, why are you changing it? Well, Psycho 1998 would confirm it's not great to do shot for shot exact same thing.
Yeah.
So some people complain that it's too different. Some people complain it's too much the same. But I think they balanced it out right with the 2019 movie. They changed things up for the better. They took things out. They kept things in. It wasn't a great horror film. It didn't improve much. In fact, it didn't improve at all on the original, but I wouldn't call it a bad remake. I think it was decent.
Yeah.
Pretty decent.
It veered towards the age that we're living in now, towards the age of technology. And obviously Voodoo and that would probably be considered by some to be a little bit too hokey, a little bit too old school for today. I didn't like the look of Chucky. I didn't like the look of the doll and that, but they did some kind of character development with the character during the course of the film. So you kind of like understood why he ended up. But I thought it was okay, in all honesty. I went in with really low expectations, though. And I think sometimes if you go in with low expectations, do you know what I mean? And it ends up okay, then you're surprised. It's when you go in with high expectations and stuff, you end up disappointed.
One thing that did improve on, and this is no shame, Alex Vincent, who played Andy in the original, he was a bad actor as little Andy. I don't think he was good at all. He was only like 6 years old at the time or whatever, so it's not his fault. But then you've got Gabriel Bateman, who was in the remake. I think a little bit older, a little bit more experienced, and he was a professional actor. I think they benefited from that because Andy in the remake, for me, was a lot better than the original Andy.
Yeah.
Personally.
Yeah, no, yeah, I agree. I mean, it's hard to find a good child actor, I suppose, isn't it? It must be tough. I think one of the best we've had ever in horror was Haley Joel Osment. I thought Haley Joel Osment was great in The Sixth Sense. I mean, I know he still acts now, but I always see Haley Joel Osment of The Sixth Sense from like Pay It Forward and that as well. And but it is really hard, I think, finding a good child. Heather O'Rourke from Poltergeist. As well, you know. Good. Yeah.
Corey Feldman, he was pretty good, but he was a little bit older.
Yeah. Friday the 13th Part 4, like he shaves his head and that. That's what quickly actually, what's your thoughts? Because I don't think I've asked you this. Are you a Friday the 13th fan? Or like the franchise in general? Oh yeah, I can see it, yeah. My observational skills aren't too good these days, but so okay, what's another one on the list there?
So another one, I'll say, here's one that gets hate and love, and that is 2005's House of Wax. Okay. Have you seen that?
I have. Paris Hilton, who apparently actually got offered the role on the silver platter. She didn't even audition for it. I kind of enjoy it. I kind of enjoy it for what it is.
I do as well. I think it was decent. There was nothing bad about it. I've never saw the original, so I can't compare. And maybe that's a good thing.
Oh, the original, I will say this, the original is one of my favourite Vincent Price films. 1953. The original is a classic. It's like we're going to get to the film shortly, though. It's very different. They're both called House of Wax, but one's a slash. The original film, in a way, is kind of it has kind of slash elements to it, I guess. But they're very different movies. And to be fair, Paris Hilton, she's not much of an actress, but in all honesty, is she any worse than a lot of the other actresses that came before her?
No, she wasn't bad. I don't think she was terrible. I don't think she looked out of place. I thought she was okay. And she had a very satisfying death as well.
Oh, so, definitely. That's,
So I think everyone enjoyed that part. So I thought it was decent. I thought it was good. Again, I wouldn't put it on the great list, but I certainly wouldn't put it on the bad list.
No, it's kind of fun, isn't it? It's kind of fun. Jared Padalecki, interestingly, was in that as well, wasn't he?
Yeah, and Alicia Cuthbert. I loved Alicia Cuthbert at the time when I was watching 24 at the time.
Yeah.
It's solid cast all round.
Have you got another one?
I've got loads.
All right.
I don't want to talk. Well, there's one that might be on your bad list. So I don't want to say that yet.
Okay, I'll tell you what, we'll do two more. Two more that you choose that are,
Yeah. So
The best of
go
that
with
bunch.
2005's The Amityville Horror.
Okay.
I don't know if you mentioned it earlier, but I thought, even though it's not on my great list, I thought it was better than the original. I
Okay.
wasn't I wasn't a fan of the original. I don't know what it was. I think I just couldn't connect with the original movie.
Yeah.
Some good performances by Margot Kidder and James Brolin, but apart from the performances, I just couldn't get into the story. Because I knew it was fake. I was kind of, I tried to suspend my disbelief, but I just couldn't. I just think the remake told the story better. At the time, I thought Ryan Reynolds was a goofy actor.
Yeah.
So when he took the role of George Lutz, I thought, okay, he's changing the way he is. I think he plays a really good, serious actor. And I think that was the first film I watched him in that was a serious movie for him anyway. And again, I enjoyed it. I don't think it was a terrible movie at all. I think it was more better than bad. And again, that's another good child actress in it, Chloe Moretz.
Oh, yeah.
She played the daughter in it. So all round, it was decent.
It's one that I haven't seen since theatrical release, because it's another Platinum Dunes film.
It is.
Yeah. And all I remember is, well, basically, I think if you're a Ryan Reynolds fan and you fancy the guy, because doesn't he like spend the last third of the film without his top on?
Yeah.
You got to show off them abs, haven't you? You know, when you got like six-pack abs
I'd
like
be doing
that.
the same. I'd be doing my live videos like
that. But I'll be honest, I've never been a big fan of the original either. I don't mind it. It's just not one of my favourite horror films. I know it's an iconic film, certainly, without a doubt. But I can't really comment hugely on the 2005 film because I've only seen it at release, 16 years ago. So what's another one for you? One more.
Well, I'm going to say, since it's part of my channel, I'm going to say Halloween from 2007.
Okay.
Now, this is one that really suffers a lot for a lot of reasons. One, the original being so iconic. And one of the major things for me is they try to over-explain everything. Why does Michael do what he does? The reason why the original is good is because it doesn't explain anything. And in this remake, it takes 40 minutes to explain why Michael does what he does. And then it gets on to almost like a shot-for-shot movie near the end. It was decent, the last half of the film. I'll have to admit, I enjoyed the last half of the movie. But it does suffer a lot from being so long. I didn't like Michael's appearance in this. I think he was scarier being a 5'11" normal person rather than a 6'9" giant. If they didn't call it Halloween, it would have been a lot better. But it failed in the fact that they attempted to change it too much or explain too much. What do you think?
I don't particularly like it. Look, I mean, John Carpenter said, look, to Rob Zombie, do your own thing. Don't just copy my film, put your own stamp on it. And Rob Zombie certainly did that for like the first half of the film, like you said. Just, it's Rob Zombie, isn't it? So it's very trashy. It's very sleazy. It's like you said, had it not have been called Halloween, and I love the air of mystique that the original film had. You know, nobody knows why Michael did what he did on Halloween night, why he stabbed his sister to death, and we get this whole kind of build up himself. And he's way too big. Tyler Maine's like, 6'8", 6'9". I'd love to know what Jimmy was working out at while he was in that institute. I just think he's just, I don't particularly like it, but it's like you said, the last half of the film is basically like the original Halloween, but with gore, you know, a bit more visceral than that. And Halloween 2, 2009, I really don't like.
Well, that's an abomination.
It's an absolute, but the 2007 one, I'll be honest, it was actually very close to being on my hate list.
Yeah, I can see why. You know, it's not for everyone.
You know,
the only reason I enjoyed a bit of it was because it's a Halloween movie, and I wanted to see a Halloween movie at the cinema. And it was the first Halloween movie that I saw at the cinema. So.
But it's. I mean, like Halloween Resurrection. Not to go too much off topic, that gets a lot of hate. A lot of people hate Halloween, and I don't like Halloween Resurrection particularly, and whatever. Hate's a strong word. But do you know what, right? Halloween Resurrection, let's face it, is to me no worse than some of the slasher films we got out in the 80s.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
It's a
Definitely.
run-of-the-mill slasher flick. It's just a run-of-the-mill that has, stupid moments like Buster Rhymes, the inclusion of him, and there's moments in the film that are completely ridiculous and that. But I don't actually hate the film. Again, like so many other, I don't like it, but it's actually not my least favorite. My least favorite is Halloween: Curse of Michael Myers.
That's one of my least favorite.
Yeah, I hate the fawn storyline that they introduced. The druid. Oh god, yeah. I just thought it was an absolute mess. So yeah, well, on to my number one. Now I'm guessing this. Oh no, this isn't on your list because you don't see this as a remake, do you? Okay,
no, not at all.
And that's fair enough. Everyone's is of course 1982's The Thing. Obviously, a remake, if you will, of The Thing from Another World from 1951. I know the reason it's not classed as a remake is because they're basically derived from the same source, which is Who Goes There from 1938, published sci-fi novel. But yeah, I absolutely love this film because of the suspense, the whole kind of Agatha Christie-esque aesthetic to it. The practical effects by Rob Bottin, fantastic, which really hold up well now. The sense of isolation, getting to what you like with films, the claustrophobic aspect in that. I love the original film, the 1951 film, which ironically in Halloween, isn't it? We actually got to see The Thing from Another World on TV, which he would later go on to do 4 years later. So obviously, I'm guessing you really like this film.
Oh, it's incredible. It's one of my favorite movies, not just horror movies, but one of my favorite movies of all time. Top 5 favorite movies of all time.
Am I right with the remake thing?
I personally don't see it as a remake. I watched the original one, or the one that you would class as the original, but I don't see that as a remake at all. I think the reasons why I love it is exactly everything that you mentioned, like the isolation, all that, the style of the movie. Yeah, it's a way ahead of its time. You look at the practical effects in the thing, it wouldn't look out of place in 2021. It's just incredible special effect. In fact, the practical effects for The Thing and An American Werewolf in London are some of the best practical effects you'll ever see.
Yeah. I did a podcast on Werewolf in London a little while ago, just the year before it. And yeah, as you said, hold up remarkably well now. You've got, because Rob Bottin was actually a student, wasn't he, of Rick Baker's. Rick Baker did the effects for An American Werewolf, and his student, Rob Bottin, for The Thing. Just tremendous. So I'm guessing, like with the because it is very different, isn't it? They are. I know the location and all that's kind of the same, the isolation and that, but they are very different kind of films.
Yeah. It's a good opportunity for me to discuss another movie with you and the reasons why it's not on my list, if you will. Now, one of my favorite movies that, if it was a remake, would be near the top of my favorite horror remakes, and that would be the Stephen King's It.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned it, because I was like oohing and ahhing, contemplating. Does it go on? Is it a remake?
I don't see it as a remake. Even the trailer tells you it's not a remake. It says from the Stephen King novel.
Yeah.
If it was based on the 1990 TV miniseries, they would say that, but it's not.
Yeah.
I just feel like if a movie is taking its source material from the novel and doing a film for the very first time on the big screen, I wouldn't class it as a remake.
Yeah.
I would only class it as a remake if they're trying to remake the 1990 miniseries, but they're not doing that at all. The reason they're so similar is because they're both taking the same material from the book.
Yeah.
But they're not doing it in this instance. So I think that the 1990 one is so different to the movie. And one of the biggest reasons I don't call it a remake is because it's a movie.
Yeah.
Like you wouldn't call Dukes of Hazzard from 2005 a remake of the TV show. It's just a movie version of the TV show.
Yeah.
There's so many reasons why I don't call it a remake, but if we're going to class Stephen King's It as a remake, then it would be on this list because that's one movie that I know that some people do class it as a remake.
Yeah.
And for the purposes of that, it would definitely be on this list because the 2017 It was fantastic.
Yeah. No, I fully appreciate that view. It is, I can fully understand, why people would not see that as a remake because, like you said, they come from the same source material. So you're not remaking a film as such. You're just giving a new iteration, a new interpretation of the book, I guess. But yeah, did you like Chapter 2 as much?
I didn't like it as much, but I still enjoyed it. I know it's got its haters. I really enjoyed it. I think that's one of the movies, just like The Fly, it's got more than just a horror film. It's got a heart to it. It's a bigger story, not just showing blood, guts, and gore. You're looking at a group of people that love each other, whether they love each other as friends or whatever, but it's got a deep story to it. And I think it's all thanks to the source material by Stephen King. He really does write his characters with a lot of information, and it's hard to do that in a 3-hour miniseries. It's best to do it in a long movie. And I'm glad that they made 2 movies. I know that the second one seems a little long, but if it was only an hour and a half, 2 hours, people would go, well, that's missing. That's missing.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of content to fit in.
Yeah, exactly. You could say they could have done a trilogy and made it even bigger, but they decided to do 2 movies. They might do a prequel in the future. But I think I enjoyed the second one, not as much as the first one, but I enjoyed the second one.
Yeah, it is my favourite Stephen King novel, and I think it's over 1,100 pages. There's a lot of content, but myself, I know it's long. It's like 2 hours, 50 something minutes. I never sat there thinking, do you know what, this is too long.
Yeah, same.
I didn't. To me, it went quite quickly. I enjoyed it. I think the only criticism I have, because I think the casting was great. I think, a real kind of coming of age story and that, very kind of stand by me. Just some of the moments of CG, I think, at times were a little kind of jarring to me.
Yeah, it's the same with the first one as well. There were low budgets for the size of them. Like the first movie was $35 million budget.
Yeah.
And the second one was like $50 million budget. So they didn't have massive budgets like Avengers Endgame, So I accept the fact that CGI is going to be with us. Yeah, and I also accept that you might get some dodgy CGI, but if you can look past the CGI to the story, and if the story is good, I'll accept that. What I don't accept is bad CGI with a bad movie.
No,
it just doesn't work. You can take the good with the bad, and I think the good outweighs the bad for both of those movies.
Yeah, it's also, I think it's the highest grossing horror film of all time, isn't it? I think it made around $700 million on like you say, $35 million budget.
Yeah, it's a big profit.
Yeah. So yeah, that's basically obviously, if The Thing was discounted as a remake, then it would be The Fly, my number one. But again, if you discount that as a remake, then it'd probably be The Blob. But it's interesting that all them top 3 are all films from the sci-fi horror films from the 50s remade in the 80s.
Yeah, I think there must have been a trend back then. You get your sci-fi horror films in the 50s, they disappear for a while, and then you get your sci-fi horror films of the 80s, and then they disappear for a while. But one sci-fi horror movie that I did like, I'll just quickly mention this, it's not a remake, is The Faculty from 1998.
Yes. Directed by Robert Rodriguez.
Yeah, a great ensemble cast. If they remade that, I would be happy to see what they do with that, because not enough people are talking about this movie, and I think it's one of the best slasher horrors sci-fi movies from the 90s. So you might get that coming back again at some point.
Yeah, it's a good fun movie. I think it was written by Kevin Williamson as well, obviously off Scream. I think it was trying to do, wasn't it, for what Scream did for slasher, this was doing for like alien invasion movies.
Yeah, it's certainly done that anyway. It's nice and slick story. Yeah,
it's a good film. I actually saw that on the big screen. Like you said, great cast as well. I think that's pretty much it then. We've got through a hell of a lot of films. I don't know how long we've been doing this for, actually. I've lost track of time.
Yeah, an hour and a half or something.
Oh my God. That's a new record, man. That's going in the record books. Jeez. I think that's pretty much it for today. It's been absolutely fantastic, man, having you on here.
Not a problem. I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to talk about horror movies with anyone and everyone.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been awesome. Just going to give like some shout outs. Shout out to Dexter Williams, who is a filmmaker who has a project in the works called Mistresses of Sleep. Fellow podcaster Zoe Crawford. I believe that's actually his YouTube channel as well. And a good friend of mine, Matthew Bennett. I think I've got the name right there, on the horror theme. And of course, you've got your channel, Wolfman's Got Nards.
Yeah, a dedication to the Monster Squad from 1987. So, Barry, if any of your viewers have not seen the Monster Squad, you need to tell them to watch it straight away.
Definitely, I will do. And I'm hoping any self-respecting horror... Saying that, though, my fiance had never seen it until 3 days ago. I actually introduced her to it. Yeah.
Well, I introduced my wife to the Monster Squad about 10 years ago. And she said to me, I'm not going to like this because it's an 80s cheesy horror movie. And I'm like, just watch it. And she absolutely loved it.
Good. Yeah, it's got, again, getting back to practical effects, it's got some really good practical effects for its time.
Fantastic. Some really silly CGI effects, but some really good practical effects as well.
I think the Gill Man looks absolutely awesome, especially.
Oh, yeah.
The Gill Man in that movie, yeah. And even the Wolfman in it as well.
The transformation scene with the Wolfman was great as well.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So yeah, that's it for today. Thanks a lot to everyone that listened. Once again, great having you here, man. Cheers for coming on.
Not a problem.
And yeah, I'll be back again soon to haunt you and torment you. Take care.
Bye.